So before I go into introducing myself, one of the ways that I like talking about artificial intelligence and the security part of it is we've taught machines, which is artificial intelligence, to learn everything about us, right? But what have we done to protect ourselves from learning too much, right? So this is the perspective that I like to see artificial intelligence or other technologies or emerging technologies that we are using today. If we are trusting these solutions, these technologies with critical information. What are we doing to protect them and to also protect our information? So a little bit about me. I know that some introduction has been done already. I am a technical product manager and product security manager. I work in the intersection of product strategy and cybersecurity. And over the years, I've worked across industries like Volkswagen Group and Deloitte, which is a consulting company. I've worked at Revolut, which is like a global financial technology company, and also a Placard, which is like startup. So my experience has cut across working in consulting to also working in automobile, financial technology, and startups. So I've been leading initiatives in like product strategy, enterprise risk, and currently working around like AI governance. And one of the things that I currently do is I work with AI for I, where I focus on building secure and responsible systems and also helping to shape how governance frameworks show up inside reproduct teams. So like I said, my work is like in between like product strategy and risk management. And I'm also the co-founder of Technovel, which is a community-driven platform focused on making emerging technologies more accessible and inclusive. So my background just cuts across like using emerging technologies, talking about latest trends, how can we better make use of it, both from business context and also from professional context. So that's just like a little bit about me. So going into we are here today, and I'm going to like start with a particular sentence, like what happens when there are no rules. So we talk about AI governance. It is so easy. Anytime we talk about AI governance, it is so easy for us to jump straight into frameworks to talk about compliance, to talk about compliance models. But I just like want to take this talk from like a different angle a little bit, not starting from compliance or frameworks this time around. A few years ago, engineers at Samsung, I mean, this was like publicized. Engineers at Samsung used ChatGPT to help with some tasks, which is one of the things that we do on that we use. Like we use different LLMs, so it depends on the LLMs that people use. People use LLMs to be efficient. So the engineers at Samsung using or used ChatGPT to help them with some tasks like debugging code and summarizing meeting notes, which is not harmless because to some extent we want to be efficient and more productive. But except that the only part that is different from what they did is that they pasted internal source code into a public system, which is twice. So that code that was pasted into the public system, which they don't have control over, of course, the code ended up on like OpenAI servers. So it became part of a black box that they couldn't see into because they don't have control over what happens on OpenAI server. So what happened at that point happened not because someone was trying to be reckless. It was not because the model failed. So this time it wasn't even the model that failed. It wasn't because that person was reckless, but because no one told them not to do it, because there was no policy, there was no clarity into what should we do with any internal or external or third-party AI tools that we are using. So that is exactly what is currently happening right now. So many organizations, we assume the absence of rules means things are fine, right? If things are not being set where they are supposed to set, we assume they are fine until something goes wrong. And when it does go wrong, what companies probably end up doing is sending out a new policy memo to say, oh yeah, something happened and we need to lock some things down. We need to try to contain the fallout. And that is when probably the incident already happened before we try talking about what do we need to do? But by that time, the damage is already done, and the risk wasn't at this scenario. What happened with like ChatGPT and Samsung software engineers was the risk wasn't even the AI itself. It was the fact that people were making high impact decisions with no shared understanding of the boundaries. And this is what happened like mostly every day at companies, even within like our personal space, beyond just working in a company. So this is the moment that we are living in. AI is everywhere. It is being embedded in tools. You can access it through APIs. People are pulling it into workflows by, product managers, marketers, researchers, even interns. Like, so in a lot of cases, all those things are happening without structure and without any real governance. And that is one of the things that we want to talk about today. So when I say what happens when there are no rules, I'm not trying to say this in a hypothetical way. I'm just like pointing out something that is already happening across industries, something that is happening across teams, and also like inside organizations that we need to know. What I just talked about around like the Samsung workers leak secrets via ChatGPT. I mean, Bloomberg published it in 2023, and this wasn't even because the model failed. It was more of like governance. How should we support? How are we supposed to use these tools? Are they standards? Do people really know what they are meant to use this thing for? So people that are using it, I mean, we are using LLMs to be more efficient, like I said, but there are more complexity beyond just using it to be efficient. Like people sharing sensitive internal code with a system they did not even fully understand. So either as a professional or for like a business concept, okay, let me say context. So we've in the tech industry right now, we've spent like decades in tech building policies around access control, encryption, vendor risk, and even compliance. And even with the fact that we've built like a lot of policies around access control and vendor risk, there are still some incidents that are happening. They're happening not because someone was malicious, not because someone clicked on a link, not because someone hacked the system, but because the governance wasn't built for the type of tool that we currently have right now. And AI is moving in a fast pace that the current governance that we have cannot even like contain, and is not even catching up with the way we are building and rapidly building artificial intelligence. So according to with the current data, is according to like the World Privacy Forum, like only 30% of organizations today have defined roles for who is actually responsible for AI systems. If you look at the context of 100% of organizations that are using it, right, only 30% of these enterprises have a defined roles of who is actually responsible for these AI systems, whether the AI systems that they built internally or third party that they try to like incorporate into the system. And out of the 30%, 20% have a dedicated department for AI governance. Most are still depending on, let's say, early stage tools like checklists. We just have a checklist and we look through, okay, have we done this? Or they just sort of do like a self-assessment template or even a scoring model, which is still like at the early stage. All those things are not bad. Having a checklist, having an audit, having a self-assessment template are not bad, but they are still at the early stage and most likely won't catch up with like the level of security and governance that we are supposed to provide to the AI systems that we are using. Now, these numbers alone already tell us something important. Like we are scaling AI use across industries. Like we are embedding it into critical decision making, like hiring, healthcare, financial systems, security, and even yet, like in the majority of all these companies, there is no structures for who owns the risk. So if risk happen in any of the sector, like all this critical infrastructure or critical sector, who actually owns it? It is good that we are embedding AI system into our workflow to make it more efficient and productive, and to also make us stand out, in the markets, right? But if there is no dedicated team watching the life cycle of these AI systems, there is more likely that it's putting the AI, the company, the people, the customers at risk of what happened when the AI system is not well governed. And why that is happening, AI investment is doubling. I mean, it is probably like every week thing right now, that there is more investment going into AI every now and then. Like we are going from $150 billion to $300 billion in global AI spend by 2026, which means AI is no longer experimental. We are no longer experimenting with it, and we are not doing research, and we are not doing R&D projects anymore with AI. AI is currently where it is right now, strategic. It is everywhere. But with the fact that AI is strategic, everyone is embedding it, the governance maturity is not keeping up with that scale. And in most cases, it is not even like close with it. So that is the current illusion of the space right now. The belief that because we have a few policies, okay, we have internal policies, we have AUP, we have different policies, or we have run, like, let's say, some fairness audits during the training, or let's say we've named a responsible person somewhere in the documents that we have, that, oh yeah, this person will be the one in control. Just because we have all those things doesn't mean we have AI governance. But because in reality, most of what we are calling AI governance today is not even embedded into anything. We just stopped at the training level. So it is not showing up at the points of decision, or even like not even like shaping the product roadmap. More like we are connecting it to what happens when a product or a model fails in the real world. That is where AI governance comes into play. So what we are left with is a system that feels governed, but it is not really governed at this point. Like we sort of like just assume, oh yeah, we have it governed because we've done some checklists, or because we have someone that we named in the documents as being responsible for this thing, but it isn't. It's sort of like even like look secure, like, oh, we are governing the AI system, we are securing the AI system. But in real sense, if we look through the AI life cycle and look at which part are we actually governing, we know that it is not even like as true as we have it on paper. So there are like the current state of AI governance right now is, what we are seeing right now is that AI governance is evolving. Yes, there are some policies coming up, which is limited, or let's say specific to countries or regions, but not at the pace or at the depth that this technology demands. Like the way AI, artificial intelligence, is moving so fast, the governance is not catching up with it. And currently the landscape that we have is so active, and the way that it is active there, it requires more attention, it requires more frameworks, it requires more discussion than ever before. Because if we are building a system that we want to trust with some sensitive information, not even some sensitive information, key information, vital information about the business, about the customers, about ourselves, then there should be a way to govern it. There should be something to govern it. So then first, governance right now remains fragmented, and in many places, it is still currently immature. Some companies are, let's say, trying to put some things into place, which we'll still talk about, which is around how does the AI governance maturity model actually looks like. Currently, it is fragmented. It is in many places, and we are not expecting it to be perfect, because I mean, AI is still at a pace where it is currently fast evolving, but there's also a need currently for governance to catch up with it. As we are building system, we need to keep building roles, people that will be managing and also responsible for these AI systems. And also there is the regulatory momentum as well. The momentum currently is working, and we've seen like the EU lead with the EU currently leads with the AI Act, and also the United States is pushing forward with like executive actions and frameworks, and other regions too, they are building their own regulatory parts. But while there are a lot of activities around, oh yeah, we need to build this, the coordination is a little bit low, and what is considered like high risk in one jurisdiction may not be addressed in another. So for global companies or companies that serve global audience, this creates like operational friction amongst, okay, we are serving the United States. We don't know how can we ensure that the AI we are embedding or building is serving them right. We are serving the EU region. How can we ensure that we put the right framework, the right governance in place to ensure that our customers, our consumers, our users' data are being protected, and most especially we are using AI in a responsible way. And also, it's also the same way in terms of like tooling. Like we do have options, right? There are different tools right now that people use in like just ensuring that there is governance in either the AI system they are building or the AI system that they are embedding. We have like different fairness assessments. We have model cards. We have internal audit frameworks. All of these things exist. All of these tools exist. But the gap is that most of them sit outside the flow of how AI is actually built and maintained. That is where the things are right now. And they are often like probably used as one-time checkpoints, or let's say a compliance exercise. We are building an AI system. We just during the building or the development phase, we just want to ensure that do we meet all these checklists, and it is just being done as a one-time thing and not being integrated into the model's life cycle as it is meant to be, like from training of the data to the decommissioning of the system itself. So it's supposed to be like evolving. It's supposed to be like a life cycle and iterated, just like the way we have the loop. But currently, it is not even at the stage where it is meant to be. So we've made progress in terms of AI governance, but we are not where we need to be in terms of how AI is currently catching up. And that leads me to, there's no way we'll talk about AI without talking about data, because before we even talk about models, before we talk about explainability, before we talk about fairness audits, we need to start with something that is more fundamental, which is data. Because every AI decision, no matter how complex the model is or even how advanced the system is, it starts with data. They are being trained on data sets. And if that data is not governed properly, there is nothing downstream that can really be trusted. Every model that is being built on a data set. So everything still has to go back to the beginning. If you are talking about governance, we need to talk about data governance. If you are talking about how do we govern AI, then let's talk about the root cause, which is the data itself. So this is where most governance conversations fall short. We focus a lot on model outputs, and we talk about post hoc interpretability, we on compliance frameworks applied after the system is live. But the key thing right now is by the time we are interpreting the results, the damage may already been done. So the way the data was collected, the way the data was labeled, cleaned, and even as much as selected, everything shapes how that model, that AI model will behave. And if bias is in the data set, if exclusion, if poor quality is baked into the data, that becomes the foundation of everything the systems learns. So as much as we are talking about AI governance, we also need to go back to the root cause, which is data governance. So we are not even talking about privacy or storage. It is about like the context of the data. How are we labeling the data? How are we cleaning? What type of data are we using to train this model? How conscious are we of the data that we are using? So it is more of like the purpose of how are we actually handling data governance? So when organizations don't ask those questions early, if you are building an AI model, or you even want to embed a third-party AI systems into your company, or you want to use it, there are some questions, especially for people that are using third-party systems. Because you don't have much control over it and you are embedding it into your systems, there are some questions that we need to start asking early. And it has to show up. It doesn't have to show up later. Like, what are the kind of data that is being used? Just because like we are trying to embed it there, you still have the rights, especially in the third-party risk management, to understand how this is being built. So data is not always about the technical inputs. It is one of the first layer to governance, if you want to like talk about governance in like the broader context. So anytime we are looking at embedding or introducing or talking about AI governance where we work, or about what we do, we also need to go back to like what are the data, how is the data being selected, how is it being labeled, because model is fundamentally being trained on data sets. And this is like I put together those like key data governance priorities. When we talk about data governance in the context of AI right now, there are some few core priorities that make the difference between a system that is just functional like, yeah, this system is just there to perform what it is meant to do, and the one that is actually accountable. So knowing the difference between, we just have a system that is functional, you can go there to use it, it can help you to detect fraud, it can help you to, see out candidates during hiring. It is functional. And also there is one that is accountable. How truly is the AI system? Is it really accountable? And the first layer of the governance priority is the data lineage, right? Then when we are talking about data lineage, we're talking about, being able to trace where the data came from. And that also go back to, how are we selecting our data? How are we collecting the data? How is the data being modified? Where is it being used? We need to be able to trace back the lineage of the data, because without clear lineage of how is the data being collected, teams can't even explain what is shaping their models, right? And this is not even specific to the data scientist or the AI engineer. It is a cross-functional decision. It's a cross-functional conversation that needs to be had. And more importantly, they can't even defend those decisions when they are challenged. So if we cannot trace back where it is happening, how are we collecting the data? It will be hard for us to even trace it back when the model fails or when the system fails. And the next one is the consent and purpose alignment. Was the data collected for the purpose it is now being used for? If we collect a data for a specific purpose, let's say related to health or something, it has to fulfill the purpose that we are collecting it from. And these are some of like the key data governance priorities that we need to ensure that we are asking as we are building our AI system. And lastly is like the ongoing data validation, right? Data doesn't just sit still. We don't just say, oh yeah, we've collected the data at the early stage of the development stage or of the life cycle, then we have to let it be there. Data changes and it degrades, it drifts over time. So what, as this thing is happening, what was accurate like 6 months ago, the data sets that we use in training the model 6 months ago may no longer be relevant, may no longer hold its importance after 6 months, after 1 year. So governance has to be active. It's not something that we just leave in place once we are done. It's something that has to be like, it has to be a live document. It has to be like a live system, because if it is active, we'll be able to like trace back and make amendments, before the model fails. And one of the key things that we intend talking about today is governance doesn't actually mean the same thing across every industry. Every industry have what governance means to them. And the way I've seen it played out is AI governance is not like a one size fits all. Like we cannot say, oh, this particular governance fits for healthcare, then it has to fit for technology and manufacturing industry. So there are different governance, there are different things that matters in different industry. For healthcare, let's use healthcare for example, right? The stakes are really high because there are a whole lot of PHI, personal information and health information like that is being stored on the system. So there is a real important, there's a big thing to actually have governance beyond just compliance, beyond just, oh yeah, I work in healthcare. Now we just want to ensure that we are HIPAA compliant. It is beyond that. We want to ensure that as much as doctors, care providers, they need to understand how this AI system works. They need to be feed in the loop when we are making decisions, especially for industries, companies, professionals building solution for either healthcare. It's also applicable to finance, right? For if we want to make a decision for a tool or a system that will be used in a particular industry, thoughts and experts, leaders need to also be feed in the loop when they want to make that decision, because the governance is sort of like it's sort of like different based on different industry, and having an understanding of what is important to healthcare is more of, oh, ethical demand for human in the loop oversight, right? How about finance? If you work in finance, in the finance industry, understanding what are the things that are really important to this particular industry when it comes to governance. Same as to the public sector, right? Transparency is important because you are holding a whole lot of like a whole lot of people's information, like the social security number, a whole lot of like their private information on the board, right? So understanding how governance works and what actually matters when we are talking about governance in each industry is important. And same as the technology space as well. Based on what happened to the Samsung incident, it's a shadow AI, right? But the bypass security protocols. So understanding what are the things that are at risk if this governance is not put in place, and knowing that it is like sector specific and industry specific is one of like the first stage into embedding and introducing governance into our workflow. And there are a whole lot of like over the years, there are a whole lot of failures, AI failures that have happened across industries, and not all failures happened because of governance. And not all failures happen because of model failures, right? It's not because a particular model fails or someone clicked on a malicious links. But if we look at it in the last few years, we start to see like a pattern that majority of these incidents, majority of these AI failures that happen, from the Microsoft state to the deep fake that is currently trending, all happen without based on not having enough oversight, right? We don't have enough control over how rapidly AI is moving. Microsoft launched Tay, and that is one of like the biggest thing I use it like is as example anytime I'm talking about like AI governance or AI failure, right? They launched Tay, which is an AI chatbot that is meant to interact with users on Twitter. And the funniest thing that happened was within 24 hours of launching this particular product, it started pushing out offensive content, right? And there were no filters, there were no clear plan for what to do if things went wrong. These are the process, these are the stages where we need to know that governance goes beyond us training the data. It also moves into post deployment. When this happened, like what happens to Tay, like Microsoft Tay, how are we going to contain the risk? How are we going to contain the model failure or even the AI failure that happened? So ensuring and having the mindset and moving AI governance from being reactive, like what happened across this timeline of different industries, as they see AI governance, they see risk management as a reactive rather than a proactive, right? How can we better prepare for things? How can we better test our model before they are even being pushed out? Can we even have like some focus group of people to test this model and ensure that the model is, use different edge cases to ensure that it is like well defined before we push to the public. So in as much as we have like the rush to push and launch the AI systems, there is also a need for us to ensure that we put a particular focus group in place to test different edge cases of this model before they go out to the public. And this is a maturity level that I came up with like I think it was last year, and this is how AI governance maturity level looks like. And the biggest question that I like to ask people working on, or that are either like an AI enthusiast working on AI products or business leaders, is where are we really on this pyramid? This is like a pyramid, and we need to understand where we are. More like doing self-assessments, we need to audit ourselves and look at the AI governance maturity from level 0 to level 4. Where are we? And I put together this diagram to simulate what we are talking about today. So it is good to have a clear picture of where we are today. And when we talk about maturity, we are also really asking how far along are we in making governance something that actually works inside the organization. It's not even something that is written down or discussed in theory. It has to be something that works. And starting from the baseline, which is level 0, and this is the level where nothing exists. There is no policy, there is no visibility, there is no conversation. People are just using tools. People are using tools freely, but internally, right? People are using different LLM models to ask questions about what they are doing, which is not bad. But this is level 0. There are some companies are operating at this level currently, And we have the level 1, which is the reactive, right? Waiting until something goes wrong before we start asking the right questions, before we start investigating, maybe before we even start putting things together, which is like the reactive stage. And we have the documented stage, which I call like the second level, is where things become like more integrated. Like governance is part of the delivery process. If you are talking about building an AI system, we know that, okay, teams know who owns what. We already, like at this stage, you know, okay, who are the people that owns what? You know, policies are tied into the workflows. You know, we have like decisions around data. We are talking about decisions about oversight, what when it happens, not after it happens. So we are having a discussion around that at this level. And then we have like the proactive and the adaptive level. This is where, you know, things get more interesting. They are sort of like preparing to be accountable. They already like look at the AI life cycle, from training of the data to the decommissioning of the AI system. They try to loop AI governance into each of these AI life cycle, right? This is them taking accountability for the systems that they are building. So most companies today sit somewhere between level 0 and 2, and a few have even reached 3, while just a very few consistently operate as level 4, which is the proactive. So most teams today are somewhere between that 1 and 2. And it is actually like good for us to know where we are as a person and as a business, and also the questions that we need to start asking our team in terms of, we are building the system. We are, even if we are not building it, we are using the system internally. Maybe we are using Gemini, we are using ChatGPT, any LLM, right? Any LLM that the company or the business is embedding, we need to understand what our maturity level is at this stage. And knowing or doing the assessment, let us know where do we want to go next. If you are at the reactive stage, we need to know how to get to the documented or the integrated stage. What are the protocols that we need to put in place to ensure that we move up into the pyramid and get to the proactive level, not wait until an incident happens before we try to like contain it. And this is the loop. This is AI lifecycle, starting from data collection to training to evaluation to deployment, monitoring, updating, and retirement. Retirement is like the decommissioning, where we made a decision that AI is no longer useful. Now, starting from the data collection, we have this AI lifecycle. But one of the biggest mistakes that we see is treating, and based on the historic AI failures that we've seen in recent times, right, is treating governance that's like something that you need to check off during the model training. So the assessment of all the past AI incidents or failures that have happened in the past, the analysis of it come up with a notion that majority of this AI fails during the training, not like the decision, the governance stop during the training phase. The governance that we put in place stop during the training phase. And that's usually where the most attention goes, right? Most attention goes into the training. We are more concerned about how the model is being built, what data is being trained on, and whether it performs well on benchmark test, which is good. But we need to start thinking beyond the training. We need to start looking at every other aspect of the AI lifecycle, because, you know, governance shows up as from data collection to monitoring. We cannot say because we pay attention to training, it's gonna behave so well in evaluation and updating. So it has to be a loop, and we need to ensure that we put like a secure and a proper governance beyond just the training. But I just put this diagram to say most tools focus on the training, about the data that is being collected, about what the data is being trained on, and forget to also pay attention to other part of the life cycle, which is the evaluation, the deployment, the monitoring, and the updating, and even when the AI retires. So there is a need for us to start like thinking and looking at that in that aspect. And I know I've mentioned this briefly about AI governance is evolving, and different regions sort of have their own benchmark that they are working on. And they have, like we have for the United States, things are getting picked up. There is guidance from the White House about like the AI Bill of Rights. We have NIST AI risk framework. We have some executive orders, but even though none of it is binding, but things are starting to like come up into do we need to have like a standard governance to ensure that companies building AI systems, people building AI systems are aware of what should be considered at every aspect of the life cycle beyond just the data collection and also the training phase, because it is an iterative AI is an iterative model. We build our data, we collect the data, and we keep training it, because keep refining the model until we get the output that we needed. So it's a specific AI governance is specific, but currently, EU is moving fast towards a stricter model, and we are also like looking forward to like the United States also like having the stricter model when it comes to like AI governance as well. So what does we've talked about how risk looks like, governance, how we need to start making decision beyond just the training. Now, what exactly does effective AI governance looks like? When we leave the session and we want to like start embedding or working or talk about AI governance, we need to also look at in practice beyond just what is on paper. What does it really look like if we want to like work on AI governance? And the thing is, it is like context driven. AI governance is context driven. It is beyond the checklist. It's good to have checklist, to have a standard, but it is beyond the checklist, right? It has to be tailored to the risk. It has to be tailored to the impact. It has to be tailored to the environment the system is operating in. So it is just beyond the system itself. It is now more of a general thing, like the impact, the environment, the risk, and a model that is used for product recommendation doesn't need the same control as the one that is making decisions in healthcare. And that is to go back to like AI governance is context driven. It is industry specific, right? And it has clear ownership. One of the ways to have like effective AI governance that I've seen that played out really good, especially for companies that are at the documented level, is they have clear ownership. They know who is responsible for what. We are not just incorporating or using this AI system. We are building this AI system. We have the executive level. There is executive buy-in of this decision, of this governance. And also the same thing as the governance infrastructure, right? Everything comes down to infrastructure. Governance only works if there is a system behind it. We are talking about tools, we are talking about workflows, documentation, audit logs. No, if people have to guess where to go, imagine we are using like an AI system and employees have to guess where to go, or even like how do they act when things go wrong, then definitely there's something wrong with the infrastructure. So everything AI is being built on infrastructure and ensuring that it is built into how teams operate. I'm not only like talking about the technical team right now, we're talking about also non-technical team, because this AI system is also being used by non-technical team. Marketing are using it, interns, researchers, name it. People are using it beyond just the technical and beyond just people that are building it. We are also need to put AI governance in check for people that are also using it beyond what we are using. And when we are talking about like building it beyond what's like people that are using inputs for technical and non-technical, there's a notion that we also need to like keep having, which is around AI governance requires cross-team accountability. It is not just the AI expertise right now. One of the biggest misconceptions about AI governance is that it belongs to the data science team or the technical team, that as long as you have like good models and smart engineers, we have got everything covered. But governance doesn't work that way, because it is not just governance is not a technical add-on that we impute into a system. It is more of like a shared responsibility, right? So the organizations that do so well they don't treat it as an isolated function. They don't treat everyone in the organization needs to know what AI governance means to this organization. So this is a discussion that we need to start having from the top level to the bottom level employees, like understanding that it is a shared responsibility, and everyone beyond just the technical team needs to start getting involved in the conversation of AI governance, because we are the tool, the system is being used beyond the technical team. There are also some team that are using it and they are not really technical. So it works best when it is not about the control, but when we are building AI governance, or we are talking about AI governance, we are talking about shared responsibility, and we are building it into our workflow. We are building it into what we are doing. So it requires cross-team accountability and not just like the AI expertise. So these pillars of AI governance was presented in a conference that I went to last year. And it shows how AI is being sectioned, the AI and governance is being sectioned into like 3 different models. For AI, we have the data itself. The first is the data, which is the foundation of every AI system. Then we have the model itself, and this is where decisions are being made, right? This is where like the systems are, the patterns and all. Then we now shift to like regulatory and compliance. And when we are talking about the regulatory, we are talking about staying ahead of evolving laws and ethical guidelines, right? Like, are we staying, if you're working in healthcare, if you're working in finance, if you're working in a company that use credit cards, do you understand how PCI DSS works? Understanding how all this compliance works. And when we are embedding these AI systems, how does this AI system influence the industry that we are working on? So we also need to understand what the pillars of AI governance is, from the AI itself to the governance itself. So the governance involves the data integrity, regulatory compliance, the ethical AI use. How are we addressing bias? How are we ensuring that there's fair outcomes in the model that we are developing or in the model that we are using? And there is a structural frameworks that talks about the integrated AI compliance, right? Like what we are looking at here is an integrated view of AI compliance, right? At the center is where we have governance, and that is to show that governance is not an isolated effort. It's a shared responsibility, and something that's a strong AI governance framework would not just create rules and say these are the things that we need to do, these are the people involved. It's sort of like build relationship between disciplines. Like the engineers know how the product manager think about the AI governance. The product managers know how the business analyst, or they know how the marketing team think about governance. All those things all comes together to form like a standard AI governance framework beyond just rules. Because if you are talking about AI governance, we are not talking about rules. We are talking about accountability. We are talking about transparency. We are talking about fairness and ethics, right? We are talking about, are we monitoring compliance? Are we putting a proper risk into place? Do we have enough technical product documentation, like documentation that people can make reference to actually learn about how things work? And understanding all these AI governance framework, this is the AI integrated compliance. We also have the industry standards, like the NIST AI RMF that I mentioned earlier, which is like currently like being used and adopted by some companies. And this is like global. We also have the EU AI Act. We have the ISO, which is like the standard AI governance management system. So just getting acquainted, especially if you're interested in working in like the AI space, understanding AI governance frameworks and knowing which one is peculiar to the industry that you are working in, because it is like specific. Governance is like context driven. It is specific, not just like something that is like generic to all industries, even though we have some general frameworks. And having talked about all these frameworks, where we need to go from here, we need to also understand, where do we go from here? Like, what is the next thing that we need to start looking at? And the first shift is we have to shift from governance as compliance, right? And it is beyond compliance. Governance is beyond compliance. It's beyond a checkbox. It's beyond, it becomes reactive. It will make it just a checklist. Rather, we're supposed to make it like something that is proactive, not reactive. And it has to align with tools, right? It has to align with tools. If we want to like move from where we are, if we've identified where we are on the spectrum of level 0 to level 4, we also need to know where we want to go from, right? We need to start treating models as living systems. Like, this is a living system. We need to keep updating it. We need to keep building it. And even the AI governance itself, the compliance, we need to keep up with trends. We need to keep up with regulations. Is there anything that has changed with the regulatory standards that we need to change in the documentation that we have internally? Is there any law that we need to be aware of? Is there anything that is happening in the space? Just like the way we have deep fakes taking up like things right now, beyond just like the industry specific, even with the use of AI amongst employees, right? Getting training, putting people into training, different training phases about these are the ways that we can put governance into place when we are talking about AI systems. And there are a whole lot of risk that comes up with if we are missing AI governance. We are talking about regulatory risk, especially in like sensitive and critical industries like finance and healthcare, where there is like legal risk when you don't like meet up to the industry standards. There's also reputational damage that we are also like the company discussing to the brands, because at the end of the day, the company, the business wants to make money, and if anything goes wrong, they are either losing their reputation to their competitors. There are a whole lot of things that is at risk, and the moment you start thinking about it from beyond just the technical phase to also the strategic phase, when we are talking about reputational damage, when we are talking about model misuse, we need to start also thinking about it from the strategic level. And there's something that probably has been or another misconception about, AI governance slows down innovation. It is not actually that. It's sort of like even speed up things, because you know that you are cutting out legal risk, you are cutting out reputational damage. So putting AI governance means you are also setting yourself up for like competitive advantage. So there is a huge competitive advantage that comes with having all those things in checks. So I'm already like moving towards the end of the session, and I sort of like put some questions here that we need to like start asking ourselves, asking the companies. Like, if you work in a company that is either using AI, or building AI or any model, we need to start asking ourselves some questions. Like, if we are using an AI system, who is responsible for this AI system when it causes harm? This is not supposed to be like a specific team. Everyone needs to be aware of, we put like a system in place that governs the system, the AI system, when it causes harm. How do we govern systems that evolve in real time? Like, it is evolving. We need to catch up with the speed of how we govern it. We are not just building products. We are not just investing the money into, oh yeah, we need to build a product as fast as possible. The faster we go to the market without putting proper security guards or governance in place, if the model fails, you still go back to like level 0, right? So as much as we are trying to like speed up with the innovation, there's also a need to have like that hard conversation when we are building it. So it doesn't even matter whether you are a data engineer or a marketing, because at the end of the day, the marketing team, especially for companies that are building AI systems, are the one interfacing with the customer. So there is a need for you to understand who is responsible when an AI system fails, or when anything happens. Then are we building governance for audit or for impact? So we also need to like, these are like some of like the hard questions that we need to like start asking ourselves. Like, why are we building the governance? Do we want to build it just to check the list, or just to ensure that our products or our system is working effectively without bias and with fairness as it is meant to be? So on a round note, there are like business recommendations around how do we actually like move from one phase to another. Is ensuring that there's internal governance structures, like from the organization charts. All companies have an org chart, from the top executives to the interns, right? Incorporating governance structures into everything, and most especially define the level of human oversight. Even before we can trust the model, we also need to have humans in place to cross-check what the model is doing and also ensure that it is performing the way it is meant to perform, and also the stakeholder interaction and communication. There should be like internal education. Everything still goes back to education, like educating the team, letting them understanding what AI risk is, letting them be aware of the governance in place, especially for the specific industry that you are working in, and also the product or the system that you are using. So just having, these are some of like the recommendations that I've seen that played out in companies that I've worked in and where I'm currently working, in terms of how we move from like level 2 to like level 4, and ensuring that we are not just being reactive, but also being proactive to the AI governance. And yeah, the last thing is we govern not to limit what AI can do, but also to protect what people should never lose. That is one of how I see AI governance in like the biggest spectrum. Like the whole thing of, we need to start early, we need to start small, but most importantly, we need to like start with like purpose. We need to find a space where we need to start. Maybe where we need to start from is to audit where we are. Look at the spectrum. Where are we as a company, as an organization? Where is the company? Where is the business? Then how do we get to the next level? How do we train employees? How do we make them be aware of the governance and especially the frameworks, right? There are different frameworks that we need to be acquainted with that I shared, especially the NIST and the country specific and industry specific, letting everyone be aware of that, because we are not just building a machine to speed up things, to make things efficient for us. We also need to ensure that it is safe for people to use, and it is safe from bias, and most especially it is well secured. So this is more of like all the highlights of everything that I want to talk about, from like AI governance to talking about the frameworks to industries, and also doing auditing and asking tough questions about how do we go from where, or where do we go from here, after we know what AI governance is. So thank you so much, everyone. And I know probably there are like questions, and I'm open to like taking questions and just like talking about how AI governance has played in probably in your company, or how you see it playing in your company, and just like talk about it.
Thank you so much. I mean, this was very insightful, and I do see a lot of questions. So the first question
Can
was by
I
Bipin.
can I stop sharing? Is it fine if I stop sharing, or
Yeah, absolutely. No issues at all. Please go ahead.
okay? Okay, yeah, you
So
can go ahead.
the first question is, how do we measure our governance maturity?
Yeah. I used to say that it starts from being aware. You know, first thing is the executives, the companies, they need to be aware of, do we really want to do this, right? Aware, it starts from awareness. And being aware means we know that we want to measure, then where are we in terms of how do people use AI in the company? If you have an AI system that you are using, right? Let's say it's a third party AI system or the one that you built. You need to first understand the context in which, how are people actually using this AI system. Then secondly, it's sort of like understanding how is the AI model built, especially because knowing where things are is the first stage to even knowing where to go. So there's a need to do like a self-assessment of, how is this AI model being built? What are the data that are being collected? Who are the people involved? You know, in the life cycle, where does governance stay? Where does it live? Where do we have cross-functional decision? Because governance is a cross-functional decision, right? And if it is not, if we look at the AI lifecycle from the collection to the decomposition or the decommissioning, and we see that there is no cross-functional insights in any of this phase, then there is a need for us to like reassess. So auditing start from being aware of, how are we currently using the AI systems? Who are the people involved? Then that will sort of like let you know which stage of the pyramid are we. If people are just using like AI system in the company without any proper documentation or rules, then there is probably also something wrong. We are actually at the level 0. But if we are at the point where, okay, people are aware, there is a document in place, then that means we are in level 2, we are at the documentation level. Then we need to find a way to get to the proactive level. Like, how do we ensure that if an AI model happens, or if an AI model failure happens, how do we contain it? We need to start thinking about how do we contain it, put systems in place. How do we contain it? How are people currently using it? How do we ensure that they are using it how it is meant to be used? What are the data that is being trained on? How can we fine tune that? How can we make it more known? How can we make our business be up to the industry standard regulations and governance? So it all starts from having that tough conversation with the top executives, with the employees, as low as down to the interns as well, because everyone is involved in how AI is being used, both internally. So just having that conversation and doing the assessments of this is the model that we are using and where are we at the moment. I don't know if that sort of like answer your questions, but I'm happy to like just buttress more on it.
I think it did because he did give his, happy sign. So thank
Yeah.
you. The second question was, can you speak more on how we govern in real time?
How what? Sorry.
How we govern in real time. So can you
How we
speak
govern
more? Yeah, in real time.
AI in real time. Okay, yeah,
Yes.
that's good. Okay, so if you're looking about AI governance in real time, I will have to like go back to where I talk about people jumping straight to like regulation. Now, if we want to like govern AI in real time, let's look at it from like the two spectrum that I talked about, which is the first one, the governance itself, where we talk about compliance. Are you compliant? Is the If we are using AI right now, right, do we have like a compliance? Are we even aware that there is a compliance in check that we are supposed to be aware of? Because everything still go back to, though we are talking beyond compliance, but if we want to govern AI, we need to know that is this being compliant? Is the model compliant? And also, most especially, the data. The early phase of the slide, I talk about governance. If we want to talk about AI governance, we have to go back to data governance. So in real time, governing AI goes to, is there any misuse in the data sets? We need to go back to the data sets. We need to ensure that we are training our data beyond misuse, beyond bias, and we are pushing forward to like fairness. So there needs to be like that conversation, that collaboration with the engineers, with the data engineers. That is if you are building the AI governance in-house. Now, if it is a third party, it's a different thing, right? There is something called SLA, right? We need to know the level of agreement. If the company wants to know, like, how do we govern AI in real time, and you are integrating a third party AI into your system, you have to have that conversation. The team, the third party risk team, if there is any team for that in that specific company, they need to have that conversation with the third party company, that the tool that they need to be aware of, how is this model being trained? Because you cannot govern what you don't know. So you need to know the data set that this model is being trained on before you can, that is how you can start governing it in real time. Like ensuring that the data, how it is being collected, is safe, and most especially it is well structured. And another thing is awareness, educating the team. We have to, in real time, we have to like keep updating and keep educating the team. Like I said, like things change every 6 months, like every now and then. Like things are not consistent. Things are not static. Things evolve. So the best way to govern things in real time is to stay up to date with what is happening in the industry. If there's a new risk that is happening in the industry, we need to educate the team. So just staying ahead of what is happening in the industry, what is happening amongst our customers. How are our customers using this AI system that we are building? That is, we are building internally, or even if you are embedding, right? How are the employees using it? That is how we can govern it real time. Then having a living document, a technical documentation sometimes can be underemphasized. We need to have that documentation, that living document that people can go to, where we can say, oh yeah, we have this, add it to part of our policy, add it to part of the trainings. If you are onboarding new employees, if you are doing monthly training, quarterly trainings, we need to also embed it into the trainings. Because I mean, at the end of the day, human is the, like what is saying cybersecurity, human is the weakest link, right? So we need to train the humans that are in charge of the system, that are using the system. So let me know if that sort of like answer the questions.
So Charles, I hope this answered your question. Do share your reaction so that we know. There are a lot of questions on recordings availability. I think we will be releasing recording very shortly, and we will be sharing the notification in the social media when the recording would be released. So give us some time and we'll get it ready. So there's one more question that has come in is how do we be compliant with the regional laws? How do we be compliant with the regional laws?
Okay,
Is
with
it
the
based on
regional.
subject location? Yeah,
Mhm.
is it based on subject location or based on data residence? Very important, very interesting question.
Okay,
Is it
yeah.
based on subject or based on data residence?
Based on, is it based on subject or based on, okay, I think I said, is it based on subject location or based on data
Location,
residence? How
yes.
do we compare with the regional laws? Okay, so if we want to treat, like, if we want to talk about like the regional laws in terms of like the AI governance, it's it's a sort of like let me say data residence specific rather than like subject location. For example, if we are working in a company or building a product that scale to like a that scale to a global audience, like you have US, you have EU, you have Asia, right? The way data management is in the United States is not the same way it is in the EU. Regulations, regional laws is more stricter in the EU. So the way you use the data, how you save the data, how you collect the data is so strict when it comes to EU compared to the US. So you have to, it is more of like the data residence, understanding that, okay, we are building this product for a global audience. For our US, for the United States, for example, what are the regional laws that we need to be aware of? What does the law says about data collection? What does it say about the life cycle of data? Because we also have the life cycle of data from the collection to like you dismissing and all the data and all, like, so we need to also understand, and also in terms of like data storage. So there is a need for us to know like that specific country, because if the data is residing in the US, it has to comply with the US law. Same as the EU, right? EU is stricter. Like when it comes to data governance, data management, they are so strict. Especially how do you manage people's data? What are the data that you collect? So it is more of like the data residence. People that are the audience, the customers, the users that are in the EU, what does the regulation says? And just adapting the solution to suit all these regional laws, which can be sort of like tricky to do, especially for startups. That's why, like for startups, it is more like important to like start with a region, one particular region before until you have the capacity to scale at large, most especially because of like data management. So it is more of like data residence than just like the subject location, in terms of if we are residing in the US, the region and the regulation laws has to comply with the US audience, has to comply. And if you are serving the EU, you have to also ensure that the data that you are collecting from the EU residents are also complying with the EU. So that is like how to stay compliant that I've seen played out. Because I remember when I was working at like Volkswagen, and Volkswagen is a global brand, right? So whatever that we are doing was specific to the EU. same as the US team as well. Whatever they are doing is specific to the US and they are being compliant with the US. So knowing and understanding what each regional law says and what it says about governance and also how it is applicable to the customers and the markets that you are serving is important. And now tailoring it to that is also important. So the data residence, like the location, is also like is one of like the key things that has to be put in place to stay compliant with the regional laws.
That's a very comprehensive response. So thank you, Rihanna. That was really great. And I think the session was very, very informative. I thank all the attendees as well for asking you questions and trying to make it more engaging. We sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure speaking. Thank you, everyone, and I really enjoyed this session.
Thank you so much. I will end this by reminding everybody that Future Data Driven Summit is on 24th September 2025. So please do register for the session and we expect to meet you there as well. So have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.